It's a gray morning. The soft hum of the city can be heard from the window as you pull yourself out of bed. The routine is familiar, predictable. A hot shower, a cup of coffee, the ever-present glow of your phone screen lighting up with messages and notifications. You walk out the door, the world moving in its usual rhythm around you, but something feels different, an almost imperceptible tug of dissatisfaction. You tell yourself it's nothing, just the weight of the world pressing down. But deep inside, there's a faint sense that you're meant for something more. That life has more to offer, yet here you are, standing in the comfort of your good enough existence. It's the paradox we all live in. You've done everything right, graduated, found a stable job, built relationships, gained some level of recognition. The world would look at you and say, "You've made it. You should be content." And yet, the feeling lingers. Beneath the surface, there's a quiet yearning, a whisper that something is missing. This, in many ways, is the modern condition. We've been taught to settle, to accept the life we have, even if it feels like it doesn't quite fit. Society encourages us to find comfort, to keep striving for what is good enough. But it's rarely the extraordinary life that calls us from within. This tension, the subtle clash between the life we are told to desire and the life we secretly crave, is the core of what it means to settle for less. You've been conditioned to believe that what you have is enough. Don't aim too high, society whispers. Be realistic. Don't strive for something you might not achieve. But deep down, you feel the gnawing dissatisfaction that comes from accepting less than you could be. Why? Why does this happen? Why is it that despite achieving what many would consider the pinnacle of success, you still feel unfulfilled? This is where the illusion begins. The illusion that what we've been told is enough actually prevents us from realizing the full extent of our potential. The comfortable life, the safe life, the life built around routines and compromises, becomes a prison disguised as freedom. We live in a world that values stability over risk, predictability over possibility, and yet, deep inside, we know that the soul craves more. To frame this contrast more clearly, what we think we want, security, comfort, the easy life, is often the very thing that keeps us from realizing what we truly need: growth, challenge, and the possibility to reach the height of our potential. The quiet comfort we settle into is laced with fear, a fear of the unknown, a fear of confronting the vastness of what could be. It's easier to settle into the known, to stay where it feels comfortable, than to take the leap into the discomfort of uncharted territory. Philosophically, this touches on a central idea that many thinkers, from Nietzsche to Jung, have explored. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the ideal of the person who transcends societal norms to create their own meaning and path in life, stands in stark contrast to what society typically offers. The last man, the person who is content in mediocrity, who does not strive for more than the bare minimum, is exactly the type of individual Nietzsche warns against. The last man has given up on becoming something greater. Instead, they exist in a complacent state of mediocrity, accepting what the world hands them without questioning, without pushing against the boundaries that have been set by others. The comfort we're told to seek, the easy life, the life of just enough, is an illusion. It's a trap. The world, with its emphasis on productivity, achievement, and outward success, encourages us to accept this version of life. But deep inside, something stirs, an unspoken truth that we are more than we allow ourselves to be. That nagging feeling is not laziness or lack of discipline. It is the voice of our own untapped potential, the quiet call of the self. As Carl Jung might say, we are meant to grow beyond our current limitations, to push through the boundaries that society has set for us. We are meant to transcend the very thing that holds us back, the belief that we are already good enough. This psychological conflict, the tension between the comfort of settling and the yearning for something more, is the very essence of the human condition. On one hand, we long for security, for the peace of mind that comes with knowing we are in control. But on the other hand, there is a desire to push boundaries, to find meaning beyond the predictable, to break free from the constraints of what we think we are capable of. This struggle, this pull between settling and striving, is what defines our journey toward becoming the fullest versions of ourselves. But what happens when we don't answer that call? What happens when we let the illusion of enough dictate our lives? We know the answer deep within. We become stagnant. Life becomes a repetitive loop, a series of routines and half-hearted attempts at finding fulfillment. We settle into a life that feels safe, but ultimately empty. We might gain approval, accumulate material possessions, or even receive accolades from others, but we still feel that something is missing. The truth is, the more we settle for less, the further we drift from our true selves. As we reflect on this, it's essential to ask ourselves, what is the cost of settling? What are we truly sacrificing when we choose to accept a life that feels good enough, rather than striving for the greatness that lies within us? The answer isn't always easy to face. It's not just about the life we could have had. It's about the person we were meant to become, the version of ourselves that could have transcended the limitations we placed on our own potential. In this moment, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. The life we're living, the one we've settled for, is not the life we were meant to live. It's a mere shadow of what could be. The challenge, then, is not to change the circumstances around us, but to change how we view them. The question is no longer about what we lack. It's about what we're refusing to see within ourselves. We've been conditioned to believe that what we have is enough. But in reality, the only thing enough is what we are capable of becoming. And that is a journey that requires us to face our fear of potential and take action. The illusion of enough has kept us confined for too long. It's time to stop accepting less, to stop hiding behind comfortable lies. Because only by breaking free from this illusion can we uncover the true extent of our potential. And this, the realization of our true power, is where the journey begins. What if the life you've been living, the life you've settled into, isn't the one you were meant to live? What if you've been living a version of yourself that was handed to you by others, not one you created for yourself? To understand why we settle for less, we must delve into the roots of this phenomenon. On the surface, the decision to settle might seem like a rational choice, the path of least resistance, the one that promises security and comfort. But as we dig deeper, we begin to realize that settling is not a choice we consciously make. It's a response, a reflex, shaped by forces far more complex than mere convenience. It is, in essence, a psychological and philosophical defense mechanism against the fear of the unknown, the unfamiliar, and ultimately, the fear of our own potential. At the heart of this struggle lies one of the most fundamental aspects of human psychology, the tension between our conscious desires and our unconscious fears. Carl Jung, a pioneer of depth psychology, introduced the concept of the shadow, those parts of ourselves that we repress, deny, or refuse to acknowledge. The shadow contains all the traits, desires, and potential that we deem unacceptable or uncomfortable. It is the untapped potential within us, the strength and brilliance we bury because it challenges our self-image, our safety, and our understanding of who we are. When we choose to settle, we are, in many ways, suppressing this shadow. The desire to grow, to reach for more, is buried under layers of self-doubt, societal expectations, and the fear of failure. We choose what feels safe, the comfortable, predictable life, rather than confront the uncertainty of stepping into the unknown. In doing so, we remain trapped in a version of ourselves that is only a shadow of what we could be. The inner conflict becomes apparent. We yearn to be more, but the very act of settling is a form of self-sabotage, a denial of who we could become. Jung believed that integrating the shadow was essential for personal growth and wholeness. When we refuse to confront the hidden aspects of our psyche, we limit our capacity for self-actualization. The act of settling is essentially an avoidance of this confrontation, a way of keeping ourselves in the comfortable, familiar space where we don't have to face the deeper, often uncomfortable truths about ourselves. But this avoidance comes at a cost. The more we suppress our potential, the more distant we become from our true selves. It's not just about our unconscious mind, however. Society also plays a critical role in shaping this tendency to settle. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be content with what we have. Social media, advertisements, and even the stories we tell ourselves about success all reinforce the idea that a life of comfort and stability is the ultimate goal. We are constantly reminded that we should want more possessions, more experiences, more validation, but at the same time, we are discouraged from reaching too high. There's a subtle, unspoken message that urges us to conform, to accept the life we have, because striving for something more is risky and unpredictable. Nietzsche's Übermensch is a direct challenge to this societal norm. He spoke of the human being who transcends the mediocrity of societal expectations, creating their own path and defining their own values. The Übermensch does not settle. They reject the comfortable life offered by the world, choosing instead to embrace the chaos and struggle that comes with self-overcoming. To settle, in Nietzsche's terms, is to become the last man, content, but stagnant. The last man is the individual who has ceased to strive for greatness, who has accepted the world's version of happiness and success without ever questioning its value. Nietzsche warned that this complacency would lead to the soul's death, the death of potential and purpose. In this context, the act of settling is not just a psychological defense against discomfort. It is also an existential compromise. It is a refusal to face the core human truth that life is a struggle, a tension between who we are and who we could be. Existence itself demands that we rise to the challenge of becoming more than what we are. To settle is to ignore this demand, to live within the comfortable confines of what is, rather than push toward what could be, is to accept a life that is, in many ways, hollow. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, understood this well. He argued that the absence of meaning, what he called the existential vacuum, was a key factor in human suffering. When we fail to live up to our potential, when we settle for a life that lacks purpose and fulfillment, we experience this vacuum. Frankl's work emphasized the human need for meaning, which arises when we confront suffering, struggle, and the challenges that come with growth. He believed that meaning is not found in comfort or stability, but in the transcendence of suffering, in the act of choosing to move beyond the limitations imposed upon us. When we settle for less, we are, in essence, avoiding the struggle for meaning. We create lives of safety, predictability, and routine, but in doing so, we deprive ourselves of the deeper meaning that comes from facing our challenges and reaching for something greater. Frankl's work illustrates that a meaningful life requires us to step out of our comfort zones, to push beyond the familiar and into the realm of uncertainty. It is only in this space, the space of struggle, discomfort, and self-overcoming, that we can find the true essence of our potential. Settling for less, therefore, is not just a psychological defense mechanism. It is an existential dead end. But why do we continue to settle despite this knowledge? Why do we so often choose the comfortable, the predictable, over the difficult and unknown? The answer lies in the human tendency to avoid discomfort, even at the cost of our potential. Our brains are wired for survival, not growth. The instinctual drive for safety, security, and certainty often overrides the more abstract desire for self-actualization. It's easier to stay where we are in a life that feels stable than to risk the unknown. The fear of failure, of inadequacy, of not living up to our own expectations can be paralyzing. This fear is deeply ingrained, and it's compounded by societal messages that encourage us to fit in, to follow the rules, to accept the life we have. In a world that prioritizes stability and conformity, the desire to break free, to strive for more, can feel like a rebellious act. The systems in place, whether they be family, culture, or even work, often do not support the individual's pursuit of greatness. Instead, they encourage us to settle for what is safe and manageable. In this way, the very systems that are supposed to support us can also be the ones that prevent us from realizing our full potential. They are not inherently malicious, but they operate within a framework that values predictability and order over growth and transformation. The pressure to conform, to be good enough, keeps us locked into a life that may not be fulfilling, but it is certainly predictable. So, the question we must ask is not why we settle, but why we're so terrified of breaking free from the norm. Why do we cling so desperately to the safety of what is known? The answer lies in the tension between our desire for comfort and our deeper, more existential yearning for meaning. The very act of settling reflects our reluctance to confront the unknown parts of ourselves, to face the vastness of what we could become. The challenge, then, is not just to break free from societal expectations, but to face the fear that holds us back from embracing our true potential. Ultimately, settling is not just a mental or psychological act. It is a spiritual and existential one. To settle is to deny the very core of who we are, to deny the possibility of becoming more, of evolving into the person we are capable of becoming. And in this denial, we create a life that feels safe but ultimately unfulfilling. To stop settling, therefore, is to begin the journey of reclaiming our potential, to break free from the fear, the doubt, and the limitations that have been imposed upon us, and to take the first step into the unknown territory of who we are meant to be. The moment of transformation is never easy. It is often marked by a deep inner struggle, a battle between the comfort of what we know and the terrifying unknown of what we could become. The discomfort of change feels like an insurmountable wall. But what if the discomfort we fear is the very thing that holds the key to our freedom? What if the fear of confronting our potential is, in itself, the greatest obstacle we need to overcome? This is the paradox at the heart of transformation. We cannot change without stepping into the unknown. And the very act of stepping into the unknown forces us to confront the parts of ourselves we've long ignored. In the moment of transformation, we are called to face the darkness within. It's a daunting prospect. The parts of us that have been hidden for so long, our deepest fears, our suppressed desires, our unacknowledged potential, all come rushing to the surface. In this space, there is no room for complacency, no room for avoiding the discomfort of growth. We are forced to reckon with who we truly are, not the version of ourselves we've carefully curated for the world. This is the point where the real work begins, when we decide, once and for all, to stop settling for less and embrace the full, raw potential within us. This process is not linear. It is not a sudden, easy leap from one state of being to another. Rather, it's a journey, a slow and often painful shedding of layers that have kept us small. At first, the fear of facing our potential can be paralyzing. We wonder, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if the person I could become is too different from the person I am now? These questions flood our minds and hold us back from taking that first step. But here's the secret. The fear itself is a sign that we are on the right path. The fear of growth is a universal experience. Every person who has ever achieved greatness, in any form, has faced it. It is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to go deeper. It's important to understand that the fear we experience when we face our potential is not fear of the future, but fear of our own power. We fear what we might become, what we might be capable of achieving if we stop limiting ourselves. The idea of limitless potential is overwhelming, even frightening. For so long, we've defined ourselves by what we lack or what we've already accomplished. To realize that we are capable of much more means we must confront the possibility of failure, rejection, and even success itself. It's not just the fear of falling short. It's the fear of rising to the occasion, of becoming someone we don't yet recognize. This realization is often accompanied by a profound shift. At first, it might feel like an existential crisis, a moment where everything you thought you knew about yourself seems to unravel. But this unraveling is not destruction. It is the prelude to reconstruction. It's the moment when the old, limited version of yourself begins to dissolve, making way for something new and powerful. This shift is both terrifying and liberating. The more we lean into it, the more we begin to understand that our potential is not something distant or abstract. It is right here, within us, waiting to be realized. Cinematically, this is the moment of the hero's descent. In stories, this is where the protagonist faces their greatest fear, the fear of who they could become. It is not an external battle, but an internal one. The struggle is not against an outside enemy, but against the limitations we have placed on ourselves. It is the moment when the hero is forced to confront the darkness within, knowing that only through this confrontation will they emerge stronger, wiser, and more fully themselves. For most people, the idea of fully embracing their potential is fraught with uncertainty. It requires the courage to confront the unknown, to embrace the discomfort that comes with pushing beyond the boundaries of what is familiar. It's easy to stay where we are, to stay within the confines of our comfort zone, because the unfamiliar feels like a threat. But the truth is, it is only by stepping into the unknown that we can discover who we are truly meant to be. It is only by confronting our deepest fears and embracing the full spectrum of our potential that we can transcend the limitations we've placed on ourselves. This process is also marked by a deep inner realization. We are not defined by our past, by our failures, or by the limitations imposed on us by society. We are not bound by the identity we've carried up until now. We are capable of creating a new self, one that is not limited by what has come before. This realization is the key to unlocking our potential. It is the moment when we stop seeing ourselves as the sum of our past mistakes and start seeing ourselves as the architects of our future. The most profound change happens not in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulation of small, deliberate choices. The choice to act when we feel fear. The choice to take a risk when we are unsure of the outcome. The choice to step into a new version of ourselves, even when it feels uncomfortable. These moments are what shape the transformation. It is in these small choices, made consistently over time, that the true power of our potential begins to manifest. In the process of transformation, we may not see immediate results. The journey toward our fullest potential is not always visible to others, nor is it always acknowledged by the world. But this is where the real work happens, in the quiet moments of decision, when we choose to move forward despite the fear, despite the uncertainty. It's a process of becoming, of shedding the old skin of who we thought we were, and stepping into the unknown territory of who we are becoming. And as we make these choices, day by day, we begin to see glimpses of the person we are capable of being. As we move through this process, something shifts within us. We stop seeing the world as something we need to fit into, and instead, we begin to see it as a canvas on which we can create. We stop seeing ourselves as passive observers in our own lives and become active participants in our own transformation. The more we embrace the fear, the uncertainty, and the discomfort, the more we realize that these are not obstacles to our potential, but gateways to it. The key to transformation lies in embracing the tension between who we are and who we are becoming. The struggle is not something to avoid, but something to lean into. It is through the struggle that we find our true power, our true potential.